In the first part of our story, we witnessed an extraordinary journey of transformation and redemption. We saw how a chance encounter at James L. Dott's lavish birthday party brought together an unlikely group of individuals: Charlotte, a struggling single mother with a hidden talent; Caleb, her prodigiously gifted son; James himself, a wealthy businessman grappling with personal demons; and Noah, a perceptive music producer with a heart of gold. From this serendipitous meeting, a remarkable story unfolded. We watched as Charlotte and Caleb's lives were transformed, their musical talents nurtured and brought to the world stage. We saw James embark on a path of redemption, finding purpose in supporting their journey. And we observed Noah's steady guidance, helping to navigate the complex world of the music industry. Their rise to fame was not without its challenges. Charlotte's secret illness, Caleb's struggle with the pressures of the spotlight, James's battle with alcoholism and past mistakes, and the cutthroat nature of the music business all threatened to derail their dreams. Yet, through it all, they formed bonds that transcended their initial roles, becoming a chosen family united by their love for music and each other. As the curtain falls on this first act, we find our characters at a crossroads. Their success has given them a platform, and with it, a growing awareness of the power they hold to effect change. The seeds of a larger purpose have been planted, a vision to bring music education to those who need it most. But as we turn the page to the next chapter of their story, we must ask, what challenges await as they step into this new role as advocates and change makers? How will their relationships evolve under the weight of their growing influence? And what unexpected melodies will join the symphony of their lives? Join us as we delve deeper into the lives of Charlotte, Caleb, James, and Noah. In this next part, we'll explore how their personal journeys intertwine with a greater mission as they use their voices not just to entertain, but to inspire and transform. The stage is set for a powerful exploration of music's ability to heal, unite, and spark social change. To prepare to be moved, challenged, and inspired as we continue this captivating tale of music, love, and the indomitable human spirit. The next movement of their extraordinary symphony is about to begin. The day Charlotte had been dreading finally arrived. As she sat in the sterile hospital room, the weight of her secret bearing down on her, she knew it was time to face the truth. Her condition had worsened rapidly, and there was no hiding it anymore. Caleb sat beside her, his young face etched with worry. He had noticed the changes in his mother, the increased fatigue, the weight loss she couldn't hide, the pain she tried to mask. But nothing had prepared him for this moment. "Caleb, sweetheart," Charlotte began, her voice barely above a whisper, "there's something I need to tell you." As she explained her illness, the treatment she had been undergoing in secret, Caleb's world seemed to shatter. Tears streamed down his face as he gripped his mother's hand tightly. "Why didn't you tell me, Mom?" he asked, his voice breaking. "I could have helped. We could have faced this together." Charlotte's heart ached at the pain in her son's eyes. "I wanted to protect you, to let you focus on your music and your recovery. I thought I could beat this without burdening you." As the reality of the situation sank in, Caleb's initial shock gave way to a determination that reminded Charlotte so much of herself. "We'll fight this together, Mom," he declared, his jaw set firmly. "You're not alone anymore." The news spread quickly. James, who had sensed something was amiss but hadn't wanted to pry, was devastated. He rushed to the hospital, memories of Hannah's illness flooding back, threatening to overwhelm him. But as he entered Charlotte's room and saw Caleb's brave face, James knew he had to be strong for them both. "Charlotte," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "I'm here. Whatever you need, whatever I can do, just name it." Noah arrived soon after, having cancelled all his appointments upon hearing the news. The shock on his face was evident, but he quickly composed himself, ready to offer his support. As Charlotte's medical team explained the treatment options, the gravity of the situation became clear. The cancer had progressed further than they had hoped, and the road ahead would be challenging. But Charlotte, surrounded by her makeshift family, felt a strength she hadn't expected. "We're going to get through this," James said firmly, looking around at the group. "Together." Casa. The days that followed were a whirlwind of tests, consultations, and difficult decisions. Charlotte, always the pillar of strength, found herself leaning on others for support. Caleb rarely left her side, often playing soft melodies on a small keyboard they had brought to the hospital room. James threw himself into researching treatment options, using his connections to consult with top oncologists around the world. His determination to help Charlotte reminded him of the man he used to be, focused, resourceful, and unwavering in his commitment. Noah took charge of managing Charlotte and Caleb's professional obligations, carefully crafting statements to the press and rearranging schedules to give them the privacy they needed. He also set up a private online platform where fans could send their well wishes, creating a virtual tidal wave of support that touched Charlotte deeply. As news of Charlotte's condition spread, the music community rallied around her. Messages of support poured in from fellow musicians, many offering to organize benefit concerts to help with medical expenses. Charlotte was overwhelmed by the outpouring of love and support. One evening, as Charlotte rested in her hospital bed, she overheard a conversation between James and Caleb in the hallway. "How are you holding up, kiddo?" James asked gently. "I'm scared," Caleb admitted, his voice small, "but I have to be strong for Mom." "It's okay to be scared," James replied. "Being strong doesn't mean you don't feel fear. It means you face that fear and keep going anyway. And you're not alone in this. We're all here for you and your mom." Charlotte felt tears welling up in her eyes. The bond that had formed between James and Caleb, the family they had all become, was a bright light in the darkness of her diagnosis. As the initial shock wore off and they settled into a new routine, Charlotte found herself reflecting on the journey that had brought them all together. From that first unexpected performance at James's party to the global campaign for music education, it had been an incredible ride. And now, facing the biggest challenge of her life, she was grateful for every moment, every song, every connection that had led to this point. One afternoon, as her medical team discussed the next steps in her treatment plan, Charlotte made a decision. "I want to keep performing," she announced, much to everyone's surprise. "As long as I'm able, I want to share my music. It's not just what I do, it's who I am." Her doctor looked concerned. "Charlotte, the treatments will be grueling. Your energy levels will be managed," Charlotte interrupted firmly. "Music has always been my strength. I won't let this illness take that away from me." Caleb, who had been quietly listening, spoke up. "We'll do it together, Mom, like always." James and Noah exchanged glances, a mix of admiration and worry on their faces. They knew better than to argue with Charlotte when her mind was made up. "All right," Noah said, a small smile playing on his lips. "Let's see what we can arrange. But you have to promise to take it easy and listen to your doctors." As they began to discuss potential performances and appearances, Charlotte felt a renewed sense of purpose. Yes, the road ahead would be difficult. There would be days of pain, of doubt, of fear. But there would also be music, and as long as there was music, there was hope. Looking around at the faces of her loved ones, Caleb's determined expression, James's supportive smile, Noah's thoughtful gaze, Charlotte knew that no matter what happened, she was not facing this battle alone. They were a family bound not by blood, but by something equally powerful, the transformative, healing power of music. As the sun set outside her hospital window, casting a warm glow across the room, Charlotte closed her eyes and began to hum softly. It was the beginning of a new melody, one that spoke of struggle and hope, of fear and courage, of the unbreakable bonds of love and family. And as Caleb joined in, followed by James and Noah, their voices blending in perfect harmony, Charlotte knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, their song would continue. The months following Charlotte's diagnosis were a whirlwind of emotions for Caleb. At just 12 years old, he found himself grappling with challenges that would test even the strongest of adults. The young prodigy, once solely focused on his music, was now navigating a complex landscape of fear, responsibility, and evolving artistry. Caleb's days took on a new rhythm. Mornings were spent at the hospital with Charlotte, often playing soft melodies on a portable keyboard as she underwent her treatments. Afternoons were divided between schoolwork and music practice, with James or Noah supervising to ensure he didn't overexert himself. Evenings were for family time, often spent in Charlotte's hospital room, sharing stories, laughter, and of course, music. As Charlotte's treatment progressed, Caleb found himself taking on more responsibilities at home, and he learned to cook simple meals, do laundry, and keep their apartment tidy. James, seeing the boy's determination, gently guided him, teaching him life skills while ensuring he didn't shoulder too much burden. "You're doing great, kid," James would say, ruffling Caleb's hair. "But remember, it's okay to be a kid too. Your mom wouldn't want you to lose that." Despite the challenges, or perhaps because of them, Caleb's music began to evolve in unexpected ways. The classical pieces that had once been his sole focus now intertwined with more contemporary sounds. He experimented with fusion, blending Bach with beatboxing, Mozart with modern pop. One day, as Caleb was practicing in the hospital's sunroom, a young patient stopped to listen. The boy, bald from chemotherapy and pulling an IV stand, was transfixed by Caleb's playing. "That's so cool," the boy exclaimed. "I've never heard classical music sound like that before." Caleb smiled, an idea forming in his mind. He began to play a popular pop song, but with a classical twist. Soon other patients gathered around, their faces lighting up with joy. From that day on, Caleb started giving impromptu concerts in the pediatric ward. His music, a bridge between classical and contemporary, brought moments of joy to children facing their own battles. Charlotte, watching from her wheelchair, felt her heart swell with pride. "You're finding your voice, sweetheart," she told him later. "Your true voice?" As word of Caleb's hospital performances spread, Noah saw an opportunity. He arranged for a small recording setup to be installed in Charlotte's hospital room. Together, mother and son began to compose and record new music, their styles blending and complementing each other in ways they never had before. Their first release, a digital EP titled Hospital Harmonies, took the music world by storm. Critics praised its innovative sound and raw emotional honesty. Fans were moved by the story behind the music, and the tracks quickly climbed the charts. But with success came new challenges. The media attention intensified, and Caleb found himself thrust into the spotlight in a way he never had been before. Interviews, photo shoots, and public appearances began to fill his schedule. James, protective as ever, worked with Noah to ensure Caleb's well-being remained the top priority. They carefully managed his commitments, ensuring he had time for school, rest, and simply being a kid. One evening, after a particularly grueling day of interviews and performances, Caleb broke down in tears. "I don't know if I can do this, Uncle James," he sobbed. "I'm so tired and I'm worried about Mom, and I miss just playing for fun." James held the boy close, his heart aching. "It's okay, Caleb. It's okay to feel overwhelmed. You're carrying so much on your young shoulders, but remember, you're not alone. We're all here for you." That night, James, Noah, and Charlotte had a long discussion about Caleb's future. They agreed to scale back his public appearances and focus more on his personal growth and well-being. As autumn turned to winter, Caleb's music continued to evolve. He started incorporating elements of jazz, world music, and even electronic sounds into his compositions. Each piece seemed to tell a story of love, loss, of hope, and of the journey he and his mother were on. In Charlotte's birthday, Caleb unveiled his most ambitious project yet, a multimedia piece that combined his piano playing with digital effects, telling the story of their family through music and visuals. As the last notes faded away, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. Charlotte pulled her son into a tight embrace. "You've grown so much," she whispered. "Not just as a musician, but as a person. I'm so proud of you, Caleb." As they held each other, Caleb realized that he had indeed changed. He was no longer just a child prodigy, but an artist coming into his own. The challenges he had faced, the responsibilities he had shouldered, had shaped him in ways he was only beginning to understand. Looking around at the faces of his family, Charlotte, James, Noah, Caleb felt a surge of love and gratitude. He knew that whatever the future held, whatever music he would create, it would be built on the foundation of love and support that surrounded him. As he sat down at the piano once more, his fingers hovering over the keys, Caleb smiled. He was ready for whatever came next, ready to face the world with his music, his family by his side. The melody that flowed from his fingertips was both familiar and new, a perfect harmony of who he had been and who he was becoming. As Charlotte's illness progressed and Caleb's musical journey evolved, James found himself stepping into a role he never imagined, that of a father figure and pillar of support for this unconventional family. The man who once measured his worth by his bank account and business deals now found purpose in the small, everyday acts of kindness and care. Each morning, James would arrive at the hospital with fresh flowers for Charlotte's room and a homemade breakfast for Caleb. He'd sit with Charlotte during her treatments, holding her hand and sharing stories of his own journey to redemption. In those quiet moments, James felt a connection he had thought lost forever after Hannah's death. "Oh no," Charlotte said one day, her voice weak but her eyes bright. "You've become the heart of this little family of ours, James." James felt a lump in his throat. "You and Caleb gave me a second chance at life," he replied softly. "I'm just trying to repay that debt." But James's support extended beyond emotional care. He threw himself into expanding their music education initiative with renewed vigor. Drawing on his years of business experience, James began approaching corporations and philanthropists, pitching the idea of a nationwide program to bring music education to underprivileged schools. His passion was infectious. In boardrooms and at charity galas, James spoke eloquently about the transformative power of music, using Caleb's story as a shining example. Slowly but surely, donations began to pour in. One evening, as James was working late on a proposal, Caleb found him in the study. "Uncle James," he said hesitantly, "can I ask you something?" James set aside his work immediately. "Of course, kiddo. What's on your mind?" Caleb's eyes were serious as he spoke. "How do you do it? How do you keep going, keep helping us, even when things get tough?" James considered the question carefully. "You know, Caleb, for a long time I thought success was about how much money you had or how powerful you were. But I've learned that true success is about the lives you touch, the difference you make. Helping you and your mom, it's given my life meaning again." As the music education initiative gained momentum, James found himself traveling more, speaking at conferences and meeting with education officials. But he always made sure to be back for Caleb's performances and Charlotte's important doctor appointments. During one such trip, James received a call from Noah. Charlotte's condition had taken a turn for the worse, and she had been rushed to the ICU. James immediately chartered a private jet, his heart racing with fear and memories of Hannah's final days. As he sat by Charlotte's bedside, holding her frail hand, James made a silent vow. He would do everything in his power to ensure that Caleb would always be cared for, that their music would continue to touch lives, that the legacy Charlotte had built would endure. When Charlotte regained consciousness, she found James there, his eyes red-rimmed but determined. "James," she whispered, "promise me you'll look after Caleb." "With everything I have," James replied, his voice thick with emotion. "He's family now." "You both are." In the weeks that followed, as Charlotte's health stabilized, James redoubled his efforts. He worked tirelessly to secure funding for a state-of-the-art music therapy wing at the hospital, named in Charlotte's honor. He set up a trust fund for Caleb's education and future, ensuring that the young musician would always have the resources to pursue his dreams. But perhaps James's greatest achievement was the day-to-day support he provided. From helping Caleb with his homework to ensuring Charlotte had the best care possible, James became the steady rock upon which their family could lean. As he watched Caleb perform at a benefit concert for the Music Education Initiative, James felt a profound sense of pride and purpose. This, he realized, was what true success felt like, not the accolades or the wealth, but the knowledge that he was part of something greater than himself, that he was making a real difference in the world. The journey of redemption was far from over, but James knew he was on the right path. With every note Caleb played, with every life touched by their music education program, James felt the wounds of his past healing, replaced by the joy of a life lived in service to others. If you've been moved by James's journey of redemption and the power of second chances, we'd love for you to join our community. Subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories that remind us of the beauty of the human spirit and the transformative power of music. Your support helps us continue sharing these important messages of hope and resilience. The warm summer breeze carried the scent of freshly cut grass as Caleb practiced his latest composition in the garden. The peaceful afternoon was suddenly interrupted by the sound of a car pulling up to the driveway. Caleb looked up, curiosity piqued, as a sleek black sedan came to a stop. The door opened and a man stepped out. Tall, well-dressed, with a face that seemed vaguely familiar, he approached with confident strides. Caleb's heart began to race as a long, buried memory surfaced. "Caleb," the man called out, his voice a mixture of hesitation and hope. "It's me, your father." "Marcus." The world seemed to tilt on its axis as Caleb stared at the man who had been absent for most of his life. Before he could respond, Charlotte appeared at the doorway, her face pale with shock. "Marcus," she breathed, her voice barely above a whisper. "What are you doing here?" Marcus shifted uncomfortably, his eyes darting between Charlotte and Caleb. I've been following your story in the news. The concerts, the charity work. I realized how much I've missed, how much I've lost. And I want to make things right." Charlotte's expression hardened. "It's been years, Marcus. You can't just waltz back into our lives and expect." "I know," Marcus interrupted, his voice pleading. "I know I have no right, but please just give me a chance to explain, to be a part of Caleb's Batu." Caleb, who had been silent until now, finally spoke. "Why now?" he asked, his young voice trembling with emotion. "Why did you leave us?" Marcus's face crumpled with regret. "I was young, scared. I made terrible mistakes. But I've changed. I want to know my son." The tension was palpable as Charlotte and Caleb exchanged glances. Before they could respond, James's car pulled up. Sensing the charged atmosphere, he quickly made his way to Charlotte's side. "What's going on here?" he asked, his protective instincts kicking in. Marcus straightened, a flash of jealousy crossing his face. "I'm Caleb's father, and you are." James's eyes narrowed. "I'm a friend of the family. A very close friend." The two men sized each other up, the air thick with unspoken challenges. Charlotte, seeing the situation escalating, made a decision. "Marcus, this isn't the time or place. If you want to talk, we'll do it properly with lawyers present." Marcus nodded reluctantly. "I understand, but I want you to know I'm not going anywhere. And I want to be a part of Caleb's life to support him. I have rights." As Marcus drove away, the family was left reeling. Caleb, overwhelmed by the encounter, retreated to his room. Charlotte sank into a chair, her face in her hands. "What are we going to do?" she asked, looking up at James. James knelt beside her, his face determined. "We'll face this together. I'll contact my lawyers. We'll make sure Caleb's best interests are protected." Over the next few weeks, the situation grew increasingly complex. Marcus, true to his word, filed for partial custody. He claimed that with Charlotte's illness, he was better equipped to provide for Caleb's needs. The legal battle that ensued was bitter and draining. Charlotte, already weakened by her treatment, struggled to keep up with the demands of court appearances and depositions. Caleb, torn between curiosity about his biological father and loyalty to the family he knew, became withdrawn and moody. James, seeing the toll it was taking on them all, decided to take matters into his own hands. He arranged a meeting with Marcus, away from the lawyers and the courtroom drama. "Look," James said, his voice firm but not unkind, "I understand you want to be a part of Caleb's life, but you need to understand what you're walking into. This isn't about your rights, it's about what's best for Caleb. Marcus bristled. And you think you know what's best for my son? I think Charlotte knows what's best for her son, James countered. And I think tearing him away from the only life he's known, especially now with Charlotte's ill, it's not the answer. As they talked, a grudging understanding began to form between the two men. Marcus, seeing the depth of James's commitment to Caleb and Charlotte, realized that his approach had been misguided. I don't want to hurt them, Marcus admitted finally. I've missed so much, but I want a chance to make it right. James nodded, an idea forming. Then let's find a way to do that without destroying what Caleb and Charlotte have built. It doesn't have to be all or nothing. In the end, a compromise was reached. Marcus agreed to withdraw his custody suit in exchange for structured visitation rights. He would be allowed to attend Caleb's performances and gradually build a relationship with his son, under Charlotte's supervision. As the dust settled, the family found itself adjusting to a new normal. Caleb, initially wary, began to open up to the idea of knowing his biological father. Charlotte, while still guarded, recognized the potential benefits of Caleb having a relationship with Marcus. And James, ever the pillar of support, continued to stand by them, navigating this new chapter with grace and understanding. As he watched Caleb tentatively sharing his latest composition with Marcus, James felt a mix of emotions, protectiveness, a twinge of jealousy, but also hope. This wasn't the family any of them had envisioned, but it was theirs. Complicated, challenging, but bound by love and the healing power of music. As the notes of Caleb's song filled the air, James knew that together they would find their harmony. Noah stood at the window of his high-rise office, gazing out at the city skyline. The view that once energized him now seemed distant and cold. His phone buzzed incessantly with messages and emails, each one a reminder of the mounting pressures he faced. As Charlotte and Caleb's manager, Noah had always prided himself on his ability to balance the demands of the music industry with the well-being of his clients. But lately that balance felt increasingly precarious. Charlotte's illness had thrown their carefully planned tour into disarray. Venues needed to be rescheduled, contracts renegotiated, and press statements carefully crafted, all while ensuring that Charlotte received the best possible care and Caleb was protected from the harsh realities of the situation. Noah ran a hand through his hair, noticing with a start that it was graying at the temples. When had that happened, he couldn't remember the last time he'd had a full night's sleep or a meal that wasn't eaten hurriedly between meetings. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. His assistant poked her head in, looking apologetic. "Mr. Chen, the label executives are here for the meeting about Caleb's new album." Noah nodded, straightening his tie and plastering on a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Send them in, please." As he sat through the meeting, discussing marketing strategies and release dates, Noah felt a growing sense of disconnect. The executives spoke of Caleb's music in terms of units sold and chart positions. They didn't see the vulnerable young boy pouring his heart into every note, trying to make sense of his mother's illness through his art. "We need to strike while the iron is hot," one executive was saying. "The publicity from Charlotte's condition could really boost sales if we play it right." Noah felt a surge of anger. "Absolutely not," he said firmly, cutting off the discussion. "We are not exploiting Charlotte's illness or Caleb's pain for sales. That's not up for debate." The meeting ended on a tense note, with the executives grumbling about Noah's lack of business sense. As they filed out, Noah slumped in his chair, exhausted. He picked up a framed photo on his desk, a candid shot of Charlotte and Caleb laughing during a recording session. Noah remembered that day vividly. The joy in the studio, the magic of their music coming together. When had it all become so complicated? That evening, as Noah drove to the hospital to visit Charlotte, he found himself questioning everything. Was he really doing what was best for Charlotte and Caleb? Or had he become so caught up in the machine of the music industry that he'd lost sight of what truly mattered? Charlotte, despite her weakened state, noticed Noah's distress immediately. "What's wrong?" she asked, patting the bed beside her. Noah sat heavily, the weight of his thoughts pressing down on him. "I don't know if I can do this anymore, Charlotte," he admitted. "The industry, the pressure, it's all becoming too much. I feel like I'm failing you and Caleb." Charlotte reached out, taking Noah's hand in hers. "Oh, Noah," she said softly, "you've been our rock through all of this. We couldn't have made it this far without you." Her words, meant to comfort, only intensified Noah's inner turmoil. "But at what cost?" he asked. "I'm tired, Charlotte, so tired. And I'm starting to wonder if this is really the best way to honor your music, to protect Caleb's future." They talked long into the night about the pressures of the industry, the toll it was taking on all of them, and the uncertain future that lay ahead. As Noah left the hospital, he felt both lighter for having shared his burden and heavier with the realization that something needed to change. Over the next few weeks, Noah found himself at a crossroads. He threw himself into work, trying to drown out his doubts with activity. But the nagging feeling persisted, growing stronger with each passing day. It all came to a head during a charity concert for music education, a cause close to Charlotte and Caleb's hearts. As Noah watched Caleb perform, pouring his soul into every note, something shifted inside him. This, he realized, was what it was all about. Not the charts, not the sales, but the pure, transformative power of music. The way it could heal, inspire, and bring people together. In that moment, Noah made a decision. He would step back from the high-pressure world of mainstream music management. Instead, he would focus on nurturing young talents like Caleb, on projects that aligned with the values Charlotte had always championed. It wouldn't be easy. His income would take a hit, and he'd be walking away from the prestige he'd worked so hard to build. But as he watched Caleb take his final bow, Noah felt a sense of peace he hadn't experienced in years. He approached Charlotte and Caleb after the show, his mind made up. "I have an idea," he began, a new light in his eyes. "It's going to mean some big changes, but I think it's the right thing to do." As Noah outlined his vision, a small, ethically run agency focused on nurturing young musicians and promoting music education, he saw understanding and approval dawn in Charlotte's eyes. "It sounds perfect, Noah," she said, squeezing his hand. "It sounds like you." Caleb, picking up on the excitement, chimed in, "Does this mean we'll get to work with more kids like me, Uncle Noah?" Noah ruffled Caleb's hair, feeling a weight lift from his shoulders. "That's exactly what it means, kid do. We're going to make music that matters." As they left the venue that night, Noah felt a renewed sense of purpose. The road ahead would be challenging, but for the first time in a long while, he was excited about the future. He had rediscovered his passion, his reason for entering the music world in the first place. Noah looked up at the star-filled sky, a small smile playing on his lips. Sometimes he realized burnout wasn't an end. It was a beginning, a chance to realign, to remember what truly mattered. And for Noah, what mattered was the music, the people, and the difference they could make together. Tommy stepped out of his car, taking a deep breath as he approached the sprawling estate. It had been months since his emotional reunion with James in the park, and while their relationship had been slowly mending, this was his first time visiting the place James now called home. As he neared the front door, Tommy heard the faint sound of a piano. The melody was hauntingly beautiful, tinged with a complexity that belied the young age of its player. He knocked softly, not wanting to interrupt the music. James answered, a warm smile spreading across his face. "Tommy, you made it," he said, pulling his younger brother into a tight embrace. As they entered the living room, Tommy saw Caleb at the piano, his small fingers dancing across the keys with a grace that seemed almost supernatural. Charlotte sat nearby, her face pale but her eyes shining with pride as she watched her son play. "Caleb," James called softly as the piece came to an end, "there's someone I'd like you to meet." "This is my brother, Tommy." Caleb looked up, curiosity evident in his young face. "Your Uncle James's brother?" he asked, sliding off the piano bench and approaching Tommy. Tommy knelt down to Caleb's level, feeling a strange mix of nervousness and excitement. "That's right," he said. "I've heard a lot about you, Caleb. Your music is amazing." As the day progressed, Tommy found himself drawn into the unique dynamic of this unconventional family. He watched as James moved about the house with a sense of purpose he'd never seen in his older brother before, tending to Charlotte's needs and engaging with Caleb in a way that was almost paternal. During a quiet moment as Charlotte rested and Caleb practiced, Tommy and James sat on the patio, nursing cups of coffee. "This is not what I expected," Tommy admitted. "You seem different, James, happier." James nodded, his gaze distant. "I am," he said softly. "It's strange, isn't it? I lost everything, my fortune, my status, but I've gained so much more. A family, a purpose." Tommy felt a lump form in his throat. "I'm sorry I wasn't there for you," he said. "When Hannah died, when you were struggling, I should have been there." James turned to his brother, his eyes soft. "We both made mistakes, Tommy, but we're here now. That's what matters." As the days turned into weeks, Tommy found himself spending more and more time at the estate. He and Caleb formed a special bond, with Tommy sharing stories of his own struggles with addiction and how music had been a lifeline for him during recovery. One evening, as Tommy was helping Caleb with a particularly challenging piece, Charlotte watched from the doorway, her heart full of joy. "You're good with him," she said softly as Caleb ran off to fetch some sheet music. "He needs male role models in his life, especially now." Tommy felt a surge of emotion. "He's an incredible kid," he said. "You've done an amazing job, Charlotte." Charlotte's eyes misted over. "I just hope I've done enough," she whispered, "with my condition." Tommy took her hand, squeezing it gently. "Hey," he said firmly, "you've given him a foundation of love and music that will last a lifetime. And you're not alone in this. James, Noah, me, we're all here. We're family now." As the weeks passed, Tommy found himself becoming an integral part of their lives. He helped James with the Music Education Initiative, drawing on his own experiences to connect with at-risk youth. He supported Charlotte during her treatments, often sitting with her for hours sharing stories and laughter. But it was his relationship with Caleb that truly transformed Tommy. In the young boy's passion for music and resilience in the face of adversity, Tommy saw a reflection of his own journey. He found himself opening up about his past in ways he never had before, using his experiences to guide and support Caleb. One night, after a particularly emotional conversation about the challenges of growing up in the spotlight, Caleb looked at Tommy with wise beyond his years eyes. "Uncle Tommy," he said softly, "I'm glad you're here. It's like the family was missing a piece, and now it's complete." Tommy felt tears prick his eyes. "I'm glad I'm here too, kiddo," he managed, "more than you know." As he left that night, Tommy paused at the door, looking back at the warm light spilling from the windows. He thought about the twists and turns of life that had brought him to this point, the mistakes, the struggles, the long road to recovery. And now, here he was, part of something beautiful and meaningful. James joined him on the porch, wrapping an arm around his shoulders. "You okay?" he asked. Tommy nodded, a smile spreading across his face. "Yeah," he said, "I think I finally am." As the brothers stood there, the soft sound of Caleb's piano drifted through the night air. It was a new composition, one that spoke of family, of healing, of second chances. And as Tommy listened, he knew that he had found his place, his purpose. In this unconventional family bound together by love and music, he had found his home. The idea for a groundbreaking music therapy program was born on a quiet afternoon in Charlotte's hospital room. Caleb was playing a gentle melody on his portable keyboard, his music filling the sterile space with warmth and life. As Charlotte watched her son play, she noticed how the other patients in the ward seemed to perk up, their faces brightening as the music washed over them. "You know," Charlotte mused, her voice weak but her eyes bright with inspiration, "we might be onto something here." James, who had been quietly working on his laptop in the corner, looked up. "What do you mean?" Charlotte gestured towards the other patients. Look at how they're responding to Caleb's music. It's not just entertainment, it's healing. That conversation sparked a flurry of activity. James, with his business acumen, and Noah, with his music industry connections, began researching existing music therapy programs. They discovered that while music therapy was a recognized field, there was a gap in programs that combined professional-level musicianship with therapeutic techniques. Caleb, excited by the prospect of using his talent to help others, threw himself into learning about music therapy. He spent hours reading studies and watching videos, his young mind absorbing information like a sponge. "Mum," he said one day, his eyes shining with enthusiasm, "what if we could create a program where kids like me could play for patients, but also learn how to use music to help them feel better?" Charlotte smiled, running her fingers through her son's hair. "That's a beautiful idea, sweetheart. Let's see what we can do." Over the next few weeks, a plan began to take shape. They envisioned a program that would pair young musicians with patients, not just for performances, but for interactive sessions designed to aid in healing and emotional well-being. James reached out to his contacts in the medical field, arranging meetings with hospital administrators and researchers. Noah tapped into his network of musicians and music educators, gathering support and expertise. However, as they delved deeper into the development of the program, challenges began to emerge. The medical community, while intrigued by the concept, was hesitant to fully embrace what they saw as an unconventional approach. "We need hard data," one skeptical doctor told them during a presentation. "Anecdotal evidence isn't enough to justify allocating resources to this program." Undeterred, Charlotte and her team decided to launch a pilot program. They started small, with Caleb and a few other young musicians from his school volunteering their time at the hospital, where Charlotte was receiving treatment. The results were promising. Patients reported decreased pain levels and improved mood after the music sessions. Nurses noticed that participants were more cooperative with their treatments and seemed to have a more positive outlook. Funding remained a significant hurdle. Despite the positive feedback, securing financial support for a larger-scale program proved difficult. "We need to think bigger," James said during a strategy meeting. "What if we could show that this program not only helps patients, but also provides valuable experience for young musicians?" This led to a partnership with a local music conservatory. Students would receive credit for participating in the program, gaining real-world experience in the therapeutic applications of music while helping patients. As word of the program spread, more hospitals expressed interest. Charlotte, despite her weakening health, became a passionate advocate, giving interviews and speaking at medical conferences when she was able. "Music has the power to heal in ways we're only beginning to understand," she told a rapt audience at a healthcare symposium. "By combining the talent of young musicians with the needs of patients, we're not just creating beautiful music, we're creating hope." The breakthrough came when a renowned neurologist published a study on the effects of their program on patients recovering from strokes. The data showed significant improvements in motor skills and speech recovery among participants. Suddenly, doors that had been closed began to open. Grant money started flowing in, and hospitals across the country reached out, eager to implement similar programs. Caleb, now a teenager, had become an eloquent spokesperson for the initiative. His personal experiences, both as a musician and as the child of a patient, lent authenticity and emotional weight to his advocacy. "Music gave me a way to connect with my mom when words failed," he told a group of potential donors. "Now we have the chance to give that gift to others." As the program grew, challenges remained. Balancing the needs of patients with the educational requirements for the young musicians was an ongoing process of refinement. Ensuring consistency in the quality of care across different locations required careful planning and training. But with each success story, a child finding their voice through song, an elderly patient rediscovering long-lost memories through familiar melodies, the team's resolve strengthened. One evening, as Charlotte listened to Caleb play for a group of young cancer patients, she felt a sense of profound fulfillment. The music that had been her life's passion was now touching lives in ways she had never imagined. "We did it," she whispered to James, who sat beside her, his eyes misty as he watched the scene before them. James squeezed her hand gently. "No, Charlotte," he replied softly. "You did it, you and Caleb. You've created something beautiful and lasting." As Caleb's music filled the room, bringing smiles to tired faces and hope to weary hearts, Charlotte knew that whatever the future held, this legacy of healing through music would endure. The journey had been challenging, filled with setbacks and moments of doubt. But as she watched her son share his gift, bringing light to dark places, Charlotte knew that every struggle had been worth it. They had created not just a program, but a movement, one that would continue to grow and touch lives long after the final notes faded away. As the golden hues of autumn painted the city, Charlotte found herself facing the most challenging chapter of her journey yet. The experimental treatments that had kept her illness at bay were losing their efficacy, and her body was growing weaker by the day. Yet, her spirit remained undiminished, fueled by an unwavering determination to see her son flourish and their shared musical legacy endure. One crisp morning, as Charlotte sat by her bedroom window, watching leaves dance in the breeze, she made a decision. She would use whatever time she had left to create something truly extraordinary with Caleb, a final album that would encapsulate their journey, their love, and the transformative power of music. "Caleb, sweetheart," she called softly as he entered the room, his arms laden with sheet music. "I have an idea for our next project." As she outlined her vision, Caleb's eyes widened, a mix of excitement and apprehension flickering across his young face. He understood the unspoken weight of this endeavor, the possibility that it might be their last collaboration. "It's perfect, Mom," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Let's do it." The following weeks were a whirlwind of creativity and emotion. Charlotte, despite her failing health, threw herself into the project with renewed vigor. She and Caleb spent hours at the piano, composing melodies that spoke of love, loss, hope, and resilience. James and Noah, recognizing the importance of this project, worked tirelessly to create the perfect recording environment. They transformed a room in the house into a state-of-the-art studio, ensuring Charlotte could work comfortably without the strain of travel. As word of the project spread, offers of support poured in from across the music industry. Renowned musicians volunteered their talents, eager to be part of this poignant musical journey. But the heart of the album remained Charlotte and Caleb's unique bond. Each song was a testament to their relationship, a mother's love, a son's devotion, and the music that had been their shared language through it all. Recording sessions were often emotional affairs. There were days when Charlotte's strength would falter, her voice barely above a whisper. But Caleb was always there, supporting her, his young hands steady on the piano keys. "You can do it, Mum," he'd encourage gently. "Just one more take." And Charlotte, drawing strength from her son's unwavering faith, would rally, her voice finding new depths of expression born from her struggles. As the album took shape, it became clear that this was more than just a collection of songs. It was a musical biography, chronicling their journey from a struggling single mother and her prodigy son to the acclaimed duo they had become. Each track told a story of hardships overcome, of dreams realized, of the healing power of music. The title track, Eternal Melody, was a haunting duet that brought tears to the eyes of everyone in the studio. Charlotte's voice, though frail, carried a lifetime of emotion, intertwining beautifully with Caleb's pure youthful tones. It was a love letter from mother to son, a promise of an enduring connection that transcended physical boundaries. As they neared completion of the album, Charlotte's health took a sharp decline. There were days when she could barely leave her bed, let alone sing. But she refused to give up, insisting on finishing what they had started. "This is my gift to you, Caleb," she said during a particularly difficult session. "Our music, our story, it will live on long after I'm gone." Caleb, showing a maturity beyond his years, stepped up in remarkable ways, He took on more responsibility in the production process, making decisions and guiding the project forward when Charlotte was too weak to do so. The final recording session was a bittersweet affair. Charlotte, summoning every ounce of her remaining strength, delivered a performance that left everyone in the studio in awe. Her voice, infused with a lifetime of love and the poignancy of imminent farewell, soared and dipped, telling their story one last time. As the last note faded, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. Caleb rushed to embrace his mother, both of them overcome with emotion. "We did it, Mum," he whispered. "We really did it." Charlotte smiled, her eyes shining with pride and love. "Yes, we did, my darling boy, and it's beautiful." In the days that followed, as Charlotte's condition worsened, the album became a source of comfort and joy. She would listen to the rough cuts, a peaceful smile on her face, as the music transported her back to the magical moments of creation. The album, titled Eternal Melody, A Mother's Love, was released to critical acclaim. It topped charts worldwide, touching hearts with its raw emotion and exquisite musicality. But more than its commercial success, it stood as a testament to the unbreakable bond between a mother and son, and the transcendent power of music to connect, heal, and inspire. As Charlotte's strength ebbed, she found solace in the knowledge that their music would live on, that their story would continue to touch lives. And Caleb, though facing the prospect of losing his mother, knew that in every note they had created together, a part of her would always remain, guiding him, loving him, an eternal melody in his heart. Caleb stood backstage, his heart pounding as he listened to the roar of the crowd. This was his first solo performance since the release of Eternal Melody, and the weight of expectation felt heavier than ever. He closed his eyes, taking a deep breath, trying to channel the calm he always felt when his mother was by his side. "You've got this, kiddo," James's reassuring voice came from behind him. Caleb turned to see his uncle, no more than an uncle now, standing there, a proud smile on his face. Caleb nodded, grateful for the support. As he stepped onto the stage, the lights blinding and the applause deafening, he felt a familiar presence. It wasn't just the memory of Charlotte that filled him, but a sense that she was there, watching over him. The concert was a whirlwind of emotion. Caleb played pieces from their final album, his fingers dancing across the keys with a maturity that belied his young age. But it was when he debuted his new solo work that the audience truly fell silent in awe. This was Caleb as they had never heard him before, his music speaking of loss, of growth, of finding strength in the darkest of times. It was raw, it was powerful, and it was undeniably brilliant. As the final notes faded away, there was a moment of hushed silence before the hall erupted in a standing ovation. Caleb, overwhelmed by the response, felt tears pricking at his eyes. He had done it. He had taken the first step into his new musical identity. Backstage, after the concert, Caleb was surrounded by well-wishers and industry executives, all clamoring for his attention. But amidst the chaos, he felt a growing sense of unease. "Uncle James," he said quietly, pulling his guardian aside, "can we talk?" In the privacy of the dressing room, Caleb's composure crumbled. "I don't know if I can do this," he confessed, his voice trembling. "Everyone expects me to be this prodigy, to carry on Mom's legacy. But what if I'm not good enough? What if I let her down?" James listened patiently, his heart aching for the young boy who had been thrust into adulthood far too soon. "Caleb," he said gently, "your mother would be proud of you no matter what. Her legacy isn't about chart positions or critical acclaim. It's about the love of music, the power to touch people's hearts. And tonight you did that in spades." Over the next few months, Caleb threw himself into his music with renewed vigor. He experimented with new styles, collaborating with artists from diverse genres. Some purists criticized this departure from his classical roots, but Caleb remained undeterred. "Music evolves," he told an interviewer, "and so do I. My mom taught me that music is about expression, about connecting with people. That's what I'm trying to do." The pressure of public scrutiny was intense. Every performance was analyzed, every new composition dissected. Social media buzzed with opinions about the young prodigy's direction. Noah, ever the protective manager, did his best to shield Caleb from the harsher criticisms. But Caleb, wise beyond his years, insisted on staying informed. "I need to know what people are saying," he explained. "How else can I grow?" As Caleb worked on his first full solo album, he found himself grappling with more than just musical challenges. The lyrics he wrote spoke of grief, of the struggle to find identity, of the pressure to live up to a legacy. One night after a particularly grueling recording session, Caleb broke down. James found him curled up in Charlotte's old studio, clutching one of her scarves. "I miss her so much," Caleb sobbed. "How am I supposed to do this without her?" James held the boy close, his own eyes misty. "She's still with you, Caleb, in every note you play, in every song you write. And you're not alone, we're all here for you." And as the album took shape, it became clear that this was more than just a collection of songs. It was Caleb's coming-of-age story, a musical journey from child prodigy to young artist finding his own voice. The title track, "Echoes of You," was a hauntingly beautiful piece that blended Caleb's classical training with contemporary elements. It spoke of carrying the echoes of loved ones lost, of finding one's own melody within the symphonies of the past. When the album was finally released, the response was overwhelming. Critics praised Caleb's maturity and artistic growth. Fans connected deeply with the raw emotion in his music. But for Caleb, the most meaningful response came in the form of letters from young people who had been touched by his journey. They wrote of how his music had helped them through their own losses, how it had inspired them to pursue their passions. As Caleb read these letters, often with James and Noah by his side, he felt a sense of purpose stronger than ever before. He realized that in sharing his story, his struggles, his growth through music, he was carrying on his mother's legacy in the truest sense. The path ahead was still uncertain, filled with challenges and expectations. But as Caleb sat at his piano, fingers poised over the keys, he felt a sense of peace. He knew that whatever came next, he had the strength to face it, a strength born from love, nurtured by music, and echoing with the eternal melody of a mother's legacy. As the first rays of sunlight crept through the curtains, James stirred from his fitful sleep. The weight of responsibility he carried seemed heavier in these quiet morning hours. He glanced at the photo on his bedside table, a candid shot of Charlotte Caleb and himself, all laughing during a picnic in happier times. A bittersweet smile crossed his face as he remembered Charlotte's last words to him. "Take care of our boy, James. Help him find his way." With a deep breath, James rose and began his day. As he prepared breakfast, he could hear the faint sound of Caleb playing the piano upstairs. The melody was unfamiliar, a new composition perhaps. James marveled at how music had become Caleb's way of processing his emotions, just as it had been for Charlotte. Later that morning, as James sat in his home office reviewing documents for the Music Education Foundation, a gentle knock interrupted his concentration. Caleb stood in the doorway, looking uncertain. "Uncle James," he began hesitantly, "I've been thinking about my future." James set aside his work, giving Caleb his full attention. "What's on your mind, kiddo?" Caleb entered the room, fidgeting with the hem of his shirt. "I love music, I really do. But lately I've been wondering if there's more I could be doing. Mom always talked about using our talents to make a difference." James nodded encouragingly, sensing the importance of this moment. "Go on," he prompted gently. "Well," Caleb continued, gaining confidence, "I've been researching music therapy programs, and not just performing for patients, but actually studying to become a certified music therapist. And I think that's what I want to do." James felt a surge of pride and a twinge of concern. This was a significant shift from the performance-focused career path Caleb had been on. "And that's a big decision, Caleb. Are you sure this is what you want?" Caleb nodded, his eyes shining with determination. "I am. I want to use my music to heal, to help people the way Mom did. I think she'd be proud." James stood up and embraced Caleb tightly, she would be incredibly proud, Caleb. Just as I am. Over the next few weeks, James threw himself into researching music therapy programs and how to balance this new direction with Caleb's existing commitments. He consulted with Noah, educational experts, and even reached out to leading music therapists for advice. The transition wasn't easy. Some in the industry saw Caleb's decision as squandering his potential as a performer. There were heated discussions with the record label about contract obligations and future albums. Through it all, James stood firm as Caleb's advocate and protector. He negotiated tirelessly, leveraging his business acumen to create a path that would allow Caleb to pursue his studies while still honoring his musical commitments. One evening, after a particularly grueling day of meetings, James found himself alone in Charlotte's old studio. He sat at the piano, his fingers ghosting over the keys she had once played. "Am I doing the right thing, Charlotte?" he whispered to the empty room. "Am I honoring your wishes? Protecting him enough? Letting him grow?" As if in answer, his eyes fell on a piece of sheet music tucked into the piano bench. It was an unfinished composition of Charlotte's, titled Wings to Fly. At the bottom, in her elegant handwriting, was a note for Caleb: "May you always have the courage to soar." James felt a warmth spread through his chest. He realized that his role wasn't to dictate Caleb's path, but to give him the support and freedom to find his own way, just as Charlotte would have wanted. With renewed determination, James redoubled his efforts. He worked with Noah to create a flexible recording schedule that would accommodate Caleb's studies. He used his connections to set up internships and mentorship opportunities in music therapy programs. Most importantly, he made sure to carve out time each day to simply be there for Caleb, to listen, to offer guidance when asked, and to provide the stable, loving presence the boy needed as he navigated this new chapter of his life. As months passed, James watched with pride as Caleb blossomed. The young man's music took on new depths, informed by his studies and experiences in music therapy. His performances, though less frequent, carried a power and authenticity that moved audiences in profound ways. One night, after Caleb had given a benefit concert for the children's hospital where he was interning, James found him sitting quietly backstage. "You were amazing out there," James said, sitting beside him. Caleb smiled, a mix of joy and melancholy in his eyes. "I felt her with me tonight, Uncle James. Mom, it was like she was guiding my hands on the keys." James put his arm around Caleb's shoulders. "She's always with you, Caleb. In your music, in your heart, in the lives you're touching. And I know, without a doubt, that she is so proud of the man you're becoming." As they sat there, sharing a moment of quiet understanding, James felt a sense of peace wash over him. The road ahead would still have its challenges, but he knew they would face them together, as a family. In helping Caleb find his wings, James had discovered his own purpose, carrying forward Charlotte's legacy of love, music, and healing. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow across the city skyline, James sat in his study, lost in thought. The past few years had been a whirlwind of change, growth, and unexpected challenges. Tonight, his mind was focused on a more immediate concern: the pivotal concert that would take place the following evening. This wasn't just any performance. It was to be Charlotte's final public appearance, a celebration of her life and music, and Caleb's debut of his solo work. So the significance of the event weighed heavily on James's heart. A soft knock at the door pulled him from his reverie. "Come in," he called. Tommy entered, his face etched with concern. "How are you holding up, big brother?" James sighed, running a hand through his graying hair. "I'm managing. There's so much riding on tomorrow night. I just want everything to be perfect for Charlotte and Caleb." Tommy nodded, understanding the unspoken emotions behind his brother's words. "They're lucky to have you, James. We all are." As the brothers talked, discussing last-minute arrangements and sharing memories of Charlotte, the sound of a piano drifted through the house. Caleb was practicing, his music a poignant reminder of the journey that had brought them all together. The next day dawned bright and clear, as if nature itself was setting the stage for the momentous event. The concert hall buzzed with activity as final preparations were made. Backstage, a nervous energy permeated the air. Charlotte, seated in her wheelchair, looked pale but determined. Her illness had taken its toll, but her spirit remained undiminished. As the makeup artist applied the finishing touches, she caught James's eye in the mirror and smiled. "Thank you," she said softly, "for everything." James knelt beside her, taking her hand in his. "Charlotte, you don't need to thank me. You and Caleb, you've given me more than I could have ever imagined." Caleb, pacing nervously nearby, stopped to join them. "Mom, are you sure you're up for this?" he asked, his young face creased with worry. Charlotte reached out, cupping her son's cheek. "I've never been more ready for anything in my life, sweetheart. This is our night. Let's make it count." As the lights dimmed and the audience fell silent, James took his seat in the front row, his heart pounding. Tommy sat beside him, offering silent support. The concert began with a video montage of Charlotte and Caleb's journey from their early days struggling to make ends meet to their rise as a celebrated musical duo. As the final image faded, a single spotlight illuminated the stage, revealing Charlotte at the piano. Her fingers, though weakened by illness, found strength as they touched the keys. The opening notes of Song of the Soul filled the hall, and Charlotte's voice, fragile yet beautiful, began to weave its magic. As she sang, the years seemed to fall away. The Charlotte on stage was not the woman ravaged by illness, but the passionate musician who had touched countless lives with her art. The audience sat spellbound, many wiping away tears. Halfway through the song, Caleb joined his mother on stage. Their duet, a poignant blend of youth and experience, spoke of love, loss, and the unbreakable bond between them. As the final notes faded away, the hall erupted in thunderous applause. Charlotte, visibly exhausted but radiant with joy, embraced her son. As she was wheeled off stage, she paused beside James, squeezing his hand. No words were needed, their eyes said it all. The second half of the concert belonged to Caleb. As he took center stage, James held his breath, feeling a mixture of pride and anxiety. This was Caleb's moment to step out of his mother's shadow and reveal his own artistic voice. From the first note, it was clear that Caleb had come into his own. His music, while echoing the beauty and emotion that had made him and Charlotte famous, carried a distinct signature. It spoke of a young man grappling with loss, finding his place in the world and emerging stronger. As Caleb played his final piece, an original composition titled Legacy of Love, James felt tears streaming down his face. The music was a testament to everything they had been through, a promise of what was yet to come. The standing ovation that followed seemed to last an eternity. Caleb, overwhelmed by the response, bowed deeply, his eyes searching the wings where his mother watched, beaming with pride. As the audience began to file out, still buzzing with excitement, James made his way backstage. He found Charlotte and Caleb locked in an emotional embrace, both crying and laughing at the same time. "You did it," Charlotte whispered to her son. "You found your voice." James approached, his own eyes misty. "That was incredible. Both of you, Charlotte, you were magnificent. And Caleb, your music, it was beyond anything I could have imagined." As they stood there, basking in the afterglow of the performance, James felt a profound sense of gratitude. This unlikely family, brought together by circumstance and bound by love, had created something truly beautiful. Later that night, as James helped a thoroughly exhausted Charlotte into bed, she grabbed his hand. "James," she said, her voice weak but her eyes bright, "promise me you'll always be there for Caleb. He's going to need you," especially. She didn't finish the sentence, but they both understood. James nodded, his throat tight with emotion. "I promise, Charlotte, always." As he turned to leave, Charlotte called out once more, and James, "Thank you for helping us write this beautiful final chapter." James paused at the door, looking back at the remarkable woman who had changed his life in so many ways. "No, Charlotte," he said softly. "Thank you for letting me be a part of your story." As he closed the door gently behind him, James knew that while one chapter was ending, another was just beginning, and he was ready to face whatever came next, with music in his heart and family by his side. As the first light of dawn crept through the windows of the mansion, James found himself standing in the doorway of Charlotte's room, watching her peaceful slumber. The concert had taken a toll on her fragile health, but the joy it had brought seemed to linger, softening the lines of pain on her face. James's mind wandered to the challenges that lay ahead. Charlotte's condition was deteriorating rapidly, and they all knew that their time together was limited. Yet in the wake of the concert's success, there was a renewed sense of purpose, a desire to secure the legacy that Charlotte and Caleb had built together. Later that morning, as Charlotte rested, James gathered the family in his study. Caleb, looking both exhausted and exhilarated from the previous night's performance, sat beside Noah. Tommy leaned against the bookshelf, his face a mixture of concern and determination. "Now we need to talk about the future," James began, his voice steady despite the emotion he felt. "Charlotte's music, Caleb's career, the work we've been doing with music education and therapy, it's all too important to let it fade away." Noah nodded, understanding immediately. "You're thinking about creating a foundation." "Exactly," James replied. "A way to ensure that the impact of their music continues long after." He paused, unable to finish the sentence. Caleb, who had been quiet until now, spoke up. "Mom and I talked about something like this," he said softly. "She wanted to make sure that other kids would have the opportunities we did." Over the next few hours, they brainstormed ideas for what would become the Charlotte and Caleb Davies Music Foundation. Its mission would be multifaceted, supporting young musicians from underprivileged backgrounds, funding music therapy programs in hospitals, and continuing the advocacy work for music education in schools. As they discussed the details, James couldn't help but marvel at how far they had all come. He, once a ruthless businessman focused solely on profit, was now passionately planning a philanthropic endeavor. Noah, the seasoned music producer, was suggesting innovative ways to use technology to reach more children with music education. And Caleb, no longer just a child prodigy, was offering insightful ideas about how to structure the foundation's programs. Tommy, who had been listening intently, suddenly spoke up. "I want to help too," he said, his voice firm. "You know, I'm not a musician, but maybe I could work with kids who are struggling, use my experience to show them how music can be a lifeline." James felt a surge of pride for his brother. "That's a wonderful idea, Tommy. Your perspective would be invaluable." As the day wore on, their plans began to take shape. They decided to start with a series of benefit concerts, featuring Caleb and other prominent musicians who had been touched by Charlotte's story. The proceeds would form the initial funding for the foundation. Noah suggested creating a digital platform where aspiring musicians could access lessons and mentorship from established artists. "We could call it Charlotte's Melody Makers," he said, a soft smile on his face. Caleb, inspired by the discussion, began to sketch out ideas for a music therapy program that could be implemented in children's hospitals across the country. His eyes shone with enthusiasm as he explained his vision, reminding James so much of Charlotte in that moment. As evening approached, they took a break, each feeling a mix of exhaustion and excitement. James went to check on Charlotte, finding her awake and alert. "How are you feeling?" he asked gently, sitting beside her bed. Charlotte smiled, reaching for his hand. "I heard voices. You've been planning something, haven't you?" James nodded, filling her in on the day's discussions. As he spoke, he watched Charlotte's face light up with joy and pride. "It's perfect," she whispered, tears glistening in her eyes. "This is exactly what I hoped for. A way for our music to keep touching lives, even when I'm—" "Charlotte," James interrupted, his voice thick with emotion. "Your music, your spirit, they're going to live on forever through this foundation. We'll make sure of it." Charlotte squeezed his hand weakly. "I know you will, James. You've become the heart of this family, you know. I couldn't have wished for a better guardian for Caleb, a better steward for our legacy." As James left Charlotte's room that night, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. The road ahead would be challenging, managing Caleb's career, launching the foundation, all while navigating the inevitable grief that loomed on the horizon. But he knew they would face it together as a family. In the quiet of his study, James looked at the photo of Hannah that still sat on his desk. "I hope I'm making you proud," he whispered to her image. "I think I finally understand what truly matters in life." As he turned out the light, the faint sound of Caleb playing the piano drifted through the house, a new melody full of hope and promise. James smiled to himself, knowing that while one chapter was coming to a close, a beautiful new one was just beginning. The legacy of love and music that Charlotte had created would live on, touching lives and healing hearts for generations to come. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the driveway as a sleek car pulled up to the mansion. Marcus stepped out, his designer suit a stark contrast to the casual atmosphere of the home. He paused for a moment, taking in the sight of the place where his son had grown up without him. Inside, Caleb was in the middle of a practice session when James interrupted gently. "Caleb, there's someone here to see you." Curiosity piqued, Caleb followed James to the living room. His steps faltered when he saw Marcus standing there, looking both out of place and oddly vulnerable. "Dad," Caleb's voice was a mix of surprise and uncertainty. Marcus stepped forward, his usual confidence noticeably absent. "Hello, Caleb, you've grown so much." An awkward silence fell over the room. James, sensing the tension, placed a supportive hand on Caleb's shoulder. "Would you like some privacy?" he asked softly. Caleb shook his head. "No, it's okay. Uncle James can stay." Marcus's eyes flicked to James, a flash of something, jealousy perhaps, crossing his face before he composed himself. "I've been following your career, Caleb. Your music, it's extraordinary." "Thanks," Caleb replied, his tone guarded. "Why are you here, Dad?" Marcus took a deep breath. "I know I have no right to be here to ask anything of you. But I want to make amends. To be a part of your life if you'll let me." Caleb's expression remained neutral, years of emotions bubbling just beneath the surface. "And Mom, have you been to see her?" A look of pain crossed Marcus's face. "Not yet. I wasn't sure if I'd be welcome." James, who had been silent until now, spoke up. "Charlotte's condition is fragile, Marcus. Any upset could be detrimental to her health." Marcus nodded, understanding the unspoken warning. "I know, I needed to see Caleb first, to try to explain." Over the next hour, Marcus poured out his heart. He spoke of his own struggles with addiction, of the fear and shame that had driven him away all those years ago. He talked about the long road to recovery and the regret that had haunted him every day since he left. Caleb listened silently, his face a mask of conflicting emotions. When Marcus finished, the young musician stood up and walked to the piano. Without a word, he began to play a piece he had composed during the darkest days of Charlotte's illness. The melody filled the room, speaking of pain, longing, and the complex emotions of a child grappling with an absent parent's return. When the last notes faded away, Caleb turned back to Marcus, his eyes shining with unshed tears. "That's how I feel," he said simply. "I can't just forget the years you weren't here. But I think I'd like to try to know you." Marcus nodded, his own eyes moist. "That's more than I deserve. Thank you, Caleb." As Marcus prepared to leave, James pulled him aside. "He's been through a lot," James said, his voice low. "And if you're going to be in his life, you need to be all in. No more disappearing acts." Marcus met James's gaze steadily. "I understand, and I'm grateful that he's had you all these years. You've been more of a father to him than I ever was." Over the following weeks, Marcus became a cautious presence in their lives. He attended Caleb's performances, offered tentative support, and even volunteered to help with the foundation's legal work. Charlotte, when she was finally told of Marcus's return, reacted with a grace that surprised everyone. "Life's too short for bitterness," she told Caleb. "If having a relationship with your father brings you peace, then I'm happy for you." But as Marcus worked to rebuild his relationship with Caleb, the family dynamic shifted. There were moments of tension, particularly between Marcus and James as they navigated their roles in Caleb's life. But there were also moments of unexpected connection, as Marcus's legal expertise proved invaluable in setting up the foundation. One evening, after a particularly productive meeting about the foundation's structure, Marcus lingered behind as the others filed out. He turned to James, his expression serious. "I want you to know," he began hesitantly, "that I'm not trying to replace you in Caleb's life. You've been there for him in ways I never was. I'm trying to be better. To make up for lost time, if that's even possible." James studied Marcus for a long moment before responding. "Caleb has a big heart," he said finally. "There's room for both of us in it. Just don't let him down again." As Marcus nodded and left, James felt a strange mix of emotions. There was still a part of him that resented Marcus for the pain he had caused Charlotte and Caleb. But there was also a growing recognition that people could change, that redemption was possible. Later that night, as James checked on Charlotte, he found her awake, a thoughtful expression on her face. "What's on your mind?" he asked, sitting beside her bed. Charlotte smiled softly. "I was just thinking about forgiveness. About how it frees not just the forgiven, but the forgiver too." James nodded, understanding the weight of her words. As he sat there, holding Charlotte's hand and listening to the distant sound of Caleb playing a new composition, one that seemed to speak of healing and new beginnings, James realized that their unconventional family had grown once again. The road ahead would not be easy. There would be challenges as they all adjusted to Marcus's presence, as they continued to navigate Charlotte's illness, as they worked to build the foundation. But James felt a sense of hope. They had weathered so much already, and together they would face whatever came next. As the music drifted through the house, James closed his eyes, feeling grateful for the twists of fate that had brought them all together. In the end, it wasn't about perfection or the absence of struggle. It was about love, forgiveness, and the healing power of music that continued to bind them all. As we draw this chapter to a close, we hope that Charlotte, Caleb, and James's journey has touched your heart as deeply as it has touched ours. Their story of love, resilience, and the transformative power of music reminds us of the beauty that can emerge from life's greatest challenges. If this tale has resonated with you, if it stirred emotions or perhaps even inspired you in some way, we'd be honored to hear from you. Your feedback not only encourages us, but also helps us understand what stories truly connect with our audience. So, if you've enjoyed this narrative and would like to experience more stories that explore the depths of human emotion, the strength of family bonds, and the healing power of art, we invite you to leave a comment with the number 1. Your 1 in the comments will be a beacon, guiding us to create more content that speaks to your heart and celebrates the indomitable human spirit. It's a simple gesture that means the world to us and helps shape the stories we'll share in the future. Thank you for joining us on this emotional journey. We look forward to hearing from you and to continuing to bring you stories that inspire, move, and remind us all of the extraordinary resilience of the human heart. Noah stood at the window of his newly renovated studio, gazing out at the city skyline. The view was different now, both literally and figuratively. Gone were the sleek high-rises of the corporate music world. In their place was a more modest, but infinitely more fulfilling landscape. As he turned back to his desk, his eyes fell on a framed photo of Charlotte and Caleb. A bittersweet smile crossed his face as he remembered the journey that had led him to this point. The pressure, the burnout, the soul-searching, it all seemed like a lifetime ago. A knock at the door interrupted his reverie. "Come in," he called. James entered, a warm smile on his face. "How's the new place treating you, Noah?" Noah grinned, gesturing around the room. "It's perfect. Smaller, sure, but it feels right. Like I'm finally doing what I was meant to do." The two men sat down, the ease of their friendship evident in their relaxed postures. They had been through so much together, and their bond had only grown stronger. So James began, leaning forward. "Tell me about this new venture of yours. How's it going?" Noah's eyes lit up with enthusiasm. It's challenging, but in all the right ways. We've got 10 young musicians signed on already, all from underprivileged backgrounds. Talented kids who never would have had a shot in the mainstream industry. As Noah spoke, detailing his plans for nurturing these young artists and helping them develop their craft without the pressures of commercial success, James couldn't help but marvel at the transformation in his friend. Gone was the stressed, profit-driven producer. In his place was a man truly passionate about music and mentorship. And the best part, Noah continued, is that we're integrating music education and therapy into everything we do. These kids aren't just learning how to be performers, they're learning how to use their talents to make a real difference in their communities. James nodded approvingly. Sounds like you found your calling, Noah, I know. Noah's expression softened. I couldn't have done it without you all. Charlotte, Caleb, you showed me what really matters in this business. It's not about the charts or the awards. It's about the lives we touch with music. As they continued to chat, discussing the Foundation's latest projects and Caleb's upcoming performances, Noah felt a deep sense of contentment. He had taken a risk, stepping away from the familiar world of mainstream music production, but it had paid off in ways he could never have imagined. Later that afternoon, Noah visited a local community center where one of his young proteges was giving a performance for children from low-income families. As he watched the young girl pour her heart into her music, seeing the rapt faces of the children in the audience, Noah felt a lump form in his throat. This was why he had made the change. This was the impact he had always wanted to have but had lost sight of in the glitz and glamour of the industry. So the performance ended and the children crowded around the young musician, eager to ask questions and share their own dreams. Noah felt a tap on his shoulder. He turned to find Caleb standing there, a knowing smile on his face. "Feels good, doesn't it?" Caleb said softly, "to see music changing lives like this." Noah nodded, unable to speak for a moment. When he found his voice, he said, "Your mom would be so proud, Caleb, of you, of all of this. We're carrying on her legacy in the best way possible." Caleb's eyes misted over, but his smile remained. "She is proud, Uncle Noah. I can feel it. And I'm proud of you too, for following your heart, for helping these kids find their voices." As they left the community center together, discussing plans for future collaborations between Caleb and Noah's young artists, Noah felt a renewed sense of purpose. The road ahead would have its challenges, sure. Building something new always did. But he was ready to face them, inspired by Charlotte's memory and the knowledge that he was making a real difference. That night, as Noah sat in his small but cozy apartment, working on arrangements for an upcoming charity concert, he paused for a moment. He closed his eyes, listening to the faint sounds of the city outside. In the quiet, he could almost hear Charlotte's voice, singing softly, encouraging him to keep going, to keep spreading the healing power of music. With a smile, Noah opened his eyes and returned to his work. He had found his new direction, his true calling. And in doing so, he had not only honored Charlotte's memory, but had also rediscovered the joy and purpose that had drawn him to music in the first place. The future was bright, full of promise and potential, and Noah was ready to face it, one note at a time, helping young musicians find their voices and use them to change the world. The grand ballroom of the United Nations headquarters buzzed with anticipation. Delegates from around the world, music industry leaders and education policymakers filled the seats, all gathered for the International Music Education Summit. At the center of it all stood Caleb, now a poised young man ready to deliver the keynote address. James watched from the wings, his heart swelling with pride. It seemed like only yesterday that Caleb was a small boy playing on a broken keyboard. Now he was about to address world leaders on the importance of music education. As Caleb stepped up to the podium, a hush fell over the crowd. He took a deep breath, his eyes scanning the room before settling on James with a small, grateful smile. "Distinguished guests, fellow musicians, educators," Caleb began, his voice clear and confident. We are here today united by a common belief that music has the power to transform lives, to heal, to educate, and to bring people together. As Caleb spoke, sharing personal anecdotes and hard data on the benefits of music education, James couldn't help but reflect on the journey that had brought them here. The foundation they had started in Charlotte's memory had grown beyond their wildest dreams, touching lives across the globe. In the audience, Noah sat next to a group of young musicians from his mentorship program, all listening intently to Caleb's words. Tommy, now a respected counselor working with at-risk youth through music therapy, nodded along, occasionally jotting down notes. But our work is far from over, Caleb continued, his passion evident in every word. In too many places around the world, music education is seen as a luxury rather than a necessity. Today, I call on all of you to join us in changing that perception. As Caleb outlined their ambitious plan for a global music education initiative, James noticed several delegates leaning forward in their seats, clearly intrigued. This was more than just a speech, it was the beginning of a worldwide movement. After the presentation, as delegates crowded around Caleb to discuss potential collaborations, James felt a tap on his shoulder. He turned to find Marcus standing there, a look of pride and slight awkwardness on his face. "He's incredible," Marcus said softly. "You've done an amazing job with him, James." James nodded, acknowledging the compliment. Over the years, he and Marcus had developed a cautious but respectful relationship, united in their care for Caleb. "We all have," James replied. "It takes a village, as they say." As the day progressed, the summit buzzed with energy. Workshops were held, partnerships formed, and promises made. By the closing ceremony, it was clear that their initiative had gained significant traction. That evening, as the team gathered in James's hotel suite to celebrate, the atmosphere was one of jubilant exhaustion. Caleb, still riding the high of the day's success, couldn't stop smiling. "I wish Mom could have seen this," he said softly, a hint of sadness in his voice. Noah raised his glass. "She did see it, kid. She's been with us every step of the way." As they toasted to Charlotte's memory and the future of their foundation, James felt a profound sense of fulfillment. They had taken a personal tragedy and turned it into a force for global good. The next morning, as they prepared to head home, James received a call from the UN Secretary General's office. Their initiative had been officially endorsed, with a commitment to implement music education programs in conflict zones and underprivileged areas worldwide. As James shared the news with the team, the reality of what they had achieved began to sink in. This wasn't just about honoring Charlotte's memory anymore, it was about changing the world through the power of music. On the flight home, Caleb sat next to James, both lost in thought. "Uncle James," Caleb said suddenly, "do you think we're doing enough? There's still so much more we could do." James smiled, recognizing the same drive and passion that had always burned in Charlotte. "We're doing amazing things, Caleb, but you're right, there's always more to do. And we'll do it together, one step at a time." As the plane soared above the clouds, James looked out the window, marveling at how far they had come. From a small family bound by tragedy and music, they had grown into a global force for change. He thought of Charlotte, of her dream to make the world a better place through music. In that moment, high above the earth, James felt certain that wherever she was smiling down on them, proud of the legacy they had built in her name. The journey wasn't over in many ways, it was just beginning. But as James looked at Caleb, already jotting down ideas for their next project, he knew that they were ready for whatever challenges lay ahead. Together, they would continue to spread the healing power of music, touching lives and changing the world, one note at a time. Caleb stood at the window of his New York apartment, his fingers absently tapping out a melody on the glass. The city skyline glittered before him, a testament to the dreams and ambitions of millions. Yet his mind was far away, grappling with a decision that could change the course of his life. A letter lay open on his desk, the official seal of the Royal Academy of Music in London prominently displayed at the top. It was an invitation, a prestigious opportunity to join their advanced composition program for a year. The program was known for launching careers, for pushing musicians to their creative limits. It was, in many ways, a dream come true. But the timing couldn't have been more complicated. A soft knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. "Come in," he called, turning from the window. James entered, his face a mixture of concern and curiosity. "You've been quiet all day, kiddo. You'd want to talk about it." Caleb sighed, gesturing to the letter. As James read it, Caleb watched his expression change from surprise to pride and then to understanding. "This is an incredible opportunity, Caleb," James said softly, "but I can see why you're torn." Caleb nodded, sinking into a chair. "It's everything I've ever wanted professionally. But it means leaving everything here." James finished for him. "The foundation, your mom's treatments, the music therapy programs we've just started." The weight of responsibility sat heavily on Caleb's young shoulders. At just 18, he had already accomplished more than many musicians twice his age. The foundation, born from his mother's legacy, was making real change in the world. And Charlotte, though stable, still needed regular treatments and support. "I feel selfish for even considering it," Caleb admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "Mom sacrificed so much for me. How can I just leave?" James sat beside him, placing a comforting hand on his shoulder. "Your mom would want you to follow your dreams, Caleb. You know that. But what about everything we've built? The kids in the music therapy program. They're counting on me." And the conversation continued late into the night, weighing pros and cons, exploring possibilities. James listened patiently, offering advice when asked, but mostly providing a supportive presence as Caleb worked through his thoughts. Over the next few days, Caleb sought counsel from others close to him. Noah, with his industry experience, emphasized the career boost the program could provide. And he added wisely, success isn't just about accolades, it's about fulfillment. Tommy, drawing from his own experiences of missed opportunities, encouraged Caleb to seize the moment. "Life is short, kid. Sometimes you have to take risks." It was a conversation with Charlotte that finally brought clarity. Sitting by her bedside, Caleb poured out his heart, expressing his dreams and his fears. Charlotte listened, her eyes filled with love and understanding. When Caleb finished, she took his hand in hers. "Sweetheart," she said softly, "music is your gift to the world, but it's also your journey. This opportunity, it's a chance to grow, to explore, to become the artist you're meant to be." "But what about you? The foundation?" Caleb asked, his voice thick with emotion. Charlotte smiled. "We'll be right here, cheering you on. The foundation is bigger than just one person now. It's a movement. And as for me, knowing you're out there following your dreams, that's the best medicine I could ask for." In that moment, looking into his mother's eyes, Caleb felt a shift. The guilt and uncertainty began to melt away, replaced by a sense of purpose and excitement. The decision made, the next few weeks were a whirlwind of preparation. James threw himself into restructuring the foundation's programs to accommodate Caleb's absence. Noah helped arrange collaborations that would allow Caleb to contribute remotely to ongoing projects. As the day of departure drew near, Caleb found himself in the family's music room, seated at the piano that had been the heart of so many memories. His fingers moved across the keys, playing a melody that spoke of farewells and new beginnings. James stood in the doorway listening. When the last notes faded, he spoke. "That's beautiful. New composition." Caleb nodded. "It's called Wings to Fly," I thought. Maybe it could be the theme for the foundation's next big project. James smiled, recognizing the title from Charlotte's old sheet music. "It's perfect." On the day Caleb left for London, the entire extended family gathered at the airport. There were tears and hugs, promises to call and write. As Caleb prepared to go through security, he turned back one last time. Charlotte, seated in her wheelchair but looking stronger than she had in months, blew him a kiss. "Go show the world what you can do, my love." James stood beside her, his arm protectively around her shoulders. "We're so proud of you, Caleb. Remember, no matter where you are, you're never alone, we're family." As Caleb walked towards his gate, his heart was full. He was stepping into the unknown, chasing his dreams while carrying the love and support of his family with him. The road ahead would be challenging, but he was ready. In his pocket, he carried a small photo, a snapshot of the entire family, taken at the last foundation event. It was a reminder of where he came from and what he was working towards. As the plane took off, soaring over the city he called home, Caleb looked out the window. The world stretched out before him, full of possibilities. He was ready to spread his wings and fly, knowing that no matter how far he went, the music and the love of his family would always guide him home. As the crisp autumn air swirled fallen leaves across the courtyard of the grand estate, James stood at the window of his study, a steaming cup of coffee in hand. The past few months had been a whirlwind of change and adaptation since Caleb's departure for London. Though pride filled his heart at the young man's pursuit of his dreams, James couldn't deny the void left in Caleb's absence. A gentle knock at the door roused him from his reverie. "Come in," he called, turning to see Noah enter, a stack of papers tucked under his arm. "Morning, James," Noah greeted, his voice carrying a mix of excitement and trepidation. "I've got the latest reports from the foundation. I think you'll want to see this." As Noah spread the documents across James's desk, the two men pored over financial statements, program evaluations, and impact assessments. The foundation, born from Charlotte's vision and nurtured by their collective efforts, had grown beyond their wildest expectations. "These numbers are incredible," James murmured, his finger tracing a graph showing the exponential growth in children reached through their music education programs. "But with growth comes new challenges." Noah nodded, his expression serious. "That's what I wanted to discuss. We're at a crossroads, James. The foundation has outgrown its current structure. If we want to continue expanding, to reach more kids and make a bigger impact, we need to think bigger." James leaned back in his chair, his mind racing with possibilities. "What are you proposing?" "I think it's time for us to step into the corporate world," Noah said, his eyes gleaming with the excitement of a new venture. "Not to become profit-driven, but to leverage corporate structures and partnerships to amplify our impact." As they discussed the possibilities, creating a social enterprise arm of the foundation, partnering with major corporations for funding and distribution channels, even exploring the idea of a record label dedicated to young, socially conscious artists, James felt a familiar spark ignite within him. It was the same feeling he had experienced years ago in the business world, but this time it was fueled by a deeper sense of purpose. Over the next few weeks, James threw himself into research and planning. He reached out to old contacts in the business world, many of whom were surprised and intrigued by his new direction. Some nights he found himself working late into the evening, reminiscent of his days as a high-powered executive, but the motivation was entirely different now. One such night, as James sat surrounded by spreadsheets and business plans, Charlotte wheeled herself into the study. Her condition had stabilized, and on good days she was able to move around the house with some independence. "You're working too hard," she said softly, a hint of concern in her voice. James looked up, a tired smile on his face. "There's so much potential, Charlotte. So much more we could do." Charlotte reached out, taking his hand in hers. "I know, and I'm so proud of what you've all built. But don't forget to take care of yourself too." Her words gave James pause. He realized that in his enthusiasm for this new chapter, he had been neglecting other aspects of his life, his health, his relationships, the simple joys that had become so important to him over the years. The next day, James called a meeting with Noah, Tommy, and the rest of the foundation's leadership team. "We're going to move forward with expanding our reach," he announced, "but we're going to do it our way. We won't sacrifice our values or our well-being in the pursuit of growth." Together, they crafted a plan that balanced ambition with sustainability. They would create a hybrid model, part foundation, part social enterprise that would allow them to increase their impact while staying true to their mission. As word of their plan spread, James was surprised to find support coming from unexpected quarters. Former business rivals reached out, offering expertise and resources. Young entrepreneurs inspired by the foundation's work volunteered their time and skills. One afternoon, as James was finalizing a partnership agreement with a major tech company to bring music education software to underfunded schools, he received a video call from Caleb. Uncle James. Caleb's face filled the screen, his eyes bright with excitement. I just heard about the new plans for the foundation. It's incredible. As Caleb shared stories of his experiences in London and his ideas for future collaborations, James felt a warmth spread through his chest. This was what it was all about: creating opportunities, inspiring the next generation, building something that would outlast them all. Months passed, and the foundation's new initiatives began to bear fruit. Music education programs were reaching more children than ever before. Their social enterprise arm was providing jobs and training for young people interested in the music industry. Corporate partnerships were opening doors that had once seemed firmly closed. On the evening of the foundation's annual gala, James stood backstage, watching as Charlotte, resplendent in a flowing gown, addressed the audience. Her voice, though softer than in years past, still carried the passion and conviction that had started them on this journey. Music has the power to change lives, she said, her eyes scanning the crowd. It changed mine. It changed my son's. And now, thanks to all of you, it's changing the lives of children around the world. As applause filled the hall, James felt a hand on his shoulder. He turned to see Tommy standing beside him, tears glistening in his eyes. We did it, big brother, Tommy said softly. We really did it. James nodded, his own eyes misting over. No, he replied, his voice thick with emotion. We're still doing it, and we're just getting started. As the gala continued, with performances from young musicians whose lives had been touched by the foundation, James felt a profound sense of gratitude. He had been given a second chance at life, at purpose, at family, and he was determined to make the most of it, to create a legacy that would resonate for generations to come. The road ahead would have its challenges, of that he was certain, but with the love of his family, the dedication of his team, and the power of music to guide them, James knew that they could face anything. Together they would continue to write this beautiful, ever-evolving symphony of hope and change. As the seasons changed and years passed, the Davies-Lawson household settled into a new rhythm. Charlotte's condition, though still requiring constant care, had stabilized thanks to innovative treatments, partly funded by the Foundation's medical research initiative. The grand estate that had once felt too big now buzzed with a different kind of energy, one of purpose, love, and music. In a warm spring morning, Charlotte sat in her favorite spot in the garden, surrounded by blooming flowers. Her fingers, though weaker now, still moved gracefully over the keys of a portable keyboard. James approached, carrying a tray with tea and her morning medications. How are you feeling today, my dear? He asked, setting the tray down beside her. Charlotte smiled, her eyes twinkling despite the lines of age and illness that marked her face. Better than yesterday. The new melody I've been working on, I think I've finally cracked it. James listened as Charlotte played, marveling at how, even after all these years, her music could still move him to tears. When she finished, he applauded softly. Beautiful. Caleb will love it. At the mention of her son's name, Charlotte's smile widened. Have you heard from him today? How's the tour going? James nodded, pulling out his phone to show her some photos. He sent these last night. The concert in Tokyo was a huge success. And look, he's using the music therapy techniques we developed in the children's hospitals there. As they looked through the photos together, a comfortable silence fell between them. It was broken by the sound of a car pulling up the driveway. Ah, that must be Noah and Tommy, James said, glancing at his watch. They're early for the meeting. Charlotte squeezed his hand. Go on, the foundation needs you. I'll be fine here with my music." James hesitated for a moment, always reluctant to leave her side. But Charlotte shooed him away with a playful wave. "I mean it. Go change the world, Mr. Lawson." Inside, James found Noah and Tommy in deep discussion in the living room. The years had been kind to them both. Noah's hair was streaked with distinguished grey, while Tommy's face bore the contented lines of a man at peace with himself. "James," Noah greeted warmly, "we've got some exciting news about the latest expansion of the music education program." As the three men delved into discussion about new initiatives, funding strategies, and the ever-growing impact of their work, James couldn't help but reflect on how far they'd all come. The foundation, once a small tribute to Charlotte's legacy, had grown into a global force for change. Midway through their meeting, James's phone buzzed with a video call. Caleb's face appeared on the screen, flushed with excitement. "Uncle James, is Mum there? I've got amazing news." Charlotte was quickly brought in, and the family gathered around the phone. Caleb, his eyes shining, shared his latest triumph. He'd been invited to compose for a major international peace conference, bringing together world leaders through the universal language of music. As Caleb spoke animatedly about his plans, describing how he wanted to incorporate elements from various cultural traditions into his composition, James watched Charlotte's face. Her eyes glistened with pride and love, and in that moment, James saw the same young woman who had once played in small clubs, dreaming of changing the world through her music. After the call ended, the mood in the room was jubilant. Tommy raised an impromptu toast with their teacups. To Caleb, to the foundation, to the power of music. As the day wore on and the meeting concluded, James found himself back in the garden with Charlotte. The setting sun painted the sky in hues of pink and gold, a fitting backdrop to the melody Charlotte was softly playing. "You know," Charlotte said, her fingers still moving over the keys, "sometimes I can hardly believe this is our life. All those years ago, when I was a struggling single mom, I never could have imagined this." James took her hand, bringing it to his lips for a gentle kiss. "You made this happen, Charlotte. Your love, your music, it started everything." Charlotte leaned her head against his shoulder. "We made it happen, all of us together." As twilight settled over the estate, the soft notes of Charlotte's piano mingled with the chirping of evening birds. Inside, Noah and Tommy were engaged in an animated discussion about future projects. Somewhere across the world, Caleb was preparing to take the stage, carrying his family's legacy of love and music with him. James closed his eyes, savoring the moment. Their journey had been filled with ups and downs, triumphs and tragedies. But through it all, the power of music and the strength of their unconventional family had seen them through. As Charlotte began to play a familiar tune, the song of the soul that had brought them together all those years ago, James felt a profound sense of gratitude wash over him. This was their life now, not perfect, not without challenges, but rich with love, purpose, and the endless possibilities that music could bring. The melody floated on the evening breeze, a testament to their past and a promise for their future. And as the stars began to twinkle in the darkening sky, James knew that whatever lay ahead, they would face it together, their family symphony continuing to play, one beautiful note at a time. As the golden light of a late summer afternoon filtered through the windows of the estate, an air of anticipation filled the house. Today marked a special occasion, a surprise collaboration that had been months in the making. James stood in the newly renovated music room, overseeing the final touches. State-of-the-art recording equipment blended seamlessly with the room's classic elegance, a perfect metaphor for the foundation's blend of tradition and innovation. Noah bustled about, his producer's instincts kicking in as he checked levels and adjusted microphones. "Everything's set," he announced, a hint of excitement in his voice. "This is going to be something special, James." Tommy entered, pushing Charlotte's wheelchair. Despite the toll her illness had taken, Charlotte's eyes sparkled with anticipation. "Is he here yet?" she asked, her voice soft but eager. As if on cue, the sound of a car pulling up the driveway reached their ears. James moved to the window, a smile spreading across his face as he watched Caleb step out, guitar case in hand. But it was the figure who emerged from the passenger side that made James's heart swell with emotion. Marcus, Caleb's biological father, stood hesitantly by the car, his posture a mix of nervousness and determination. Over the years, Marcus had worked hard to mend the relationships he had once broken, becoming a steady, if somewhat peripheral, presence in their lives. "They're here," James announced, turning to the others. "Places everyone. Let's make this a day to remember." As Caleb entered the room, his face lit up at the sight of the gathered family. "Mum," he exclaimed, rushing to Charlotte's side and enveloping her in a gentle hug, "you're looking wonderful." Charlotte cupped her son's face in her hands, her eyes misting over. "My beautiful boy, I've missed you so much." The reunion was warm and filled with laughter, but there was an undercurrent of nervous energy. Everyone was acutely aware of the significance of what they were about to do. Marcus hung back, unsure of his place in this intimate family moment. It was James who approached him, extending a hand in welcome. "Glad you could make it, Marcus. This wouldn't be complete without you." As the group settled in, Noah explained the plan. They were going to record a new version of Song of the Soul, the piece that had been the soundtrack to their family's journey. But this time it would feature all of them, each adding their own unique touch to the melody. Charlotte took her place at the piano, her fingers finding the familiar keys with practiced ease. Caleb sat beside her, guitar at the ready. James picked up a bass while Tommy settled behind a small drum kit. Noah stood ready at the mixing board, and Marcus looked lost. "Here," Caleb said softly, handing his father a tambourine. "Everyone has a part to play." As Charlotte began to play the opening notes, a hush fell over the room. Her voice, though softer now, still carried the emotion that had first captivated audiences years ago. Caleb joined in, his guitar and voice blending perfectly with his mother's. James and Tommy added depth to the sound, their rhythm steady and sure. And Marcus, after a moment's hesitation, began to tap out a gentle beat on the tambourine, finding his place in the family symphony. As they played, years of joy and pain, laughter and tears, triumphs and setbacks seemed to flow through the music. It was more than just a song. It was the story of their lives, of the family they had built, of the love that had seen them through it all. When the final notes faded away, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. Noah, wiping his own tears, gave a thumbs up from behind the glass. That was perfect, he managed. Charlotte reached out, taking Marcus's hand in one of hers and James's in the other. "Thank you," she said softly, "all of you, for everything." As they listened to the playback, marveling at how their individual parts had come together to create something truly beautiful, James felt a profound sense of completion. This was what it was all about, not just the music, but the connections, the healing, the love that bound them all together. Later that evening, as they sat around the dinner table, sharing stories and laughter, James looked around at the faces of his family. Charlotte, her eyes tired but happy. Caleb animated as he discussed his latest compositions. And Noah and Tommy, arguing good-naturedly about the mix, and Marcus quiet but present, finally finding his place in the tapestry of their lives. James raised his glass. "To family," he said simply, "in all its wonderful, messy, musical glory." As glasses clinked and cheers echoed, the strains of their newly recorded Song of the Soul drifted from the music room. It was a reminder of where they had been, a celebration of where they were, and a promise of all that was yet to come. In that moment, surrounded by love and music, James knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. For they had created something truly remarkable, a family bound not by blood, but by the enduring power of love and the eternal language of music. As the first light of dawn painted the sky in hues of pink and gold, James stood on the balcony of the estate, a steaming cup of coffee in hand. The years had etched lines of wisdom on his face, but his eyes still sparkled with the same determination and love that had guided him through the incredible journey of the past decades. Although the grounds were stirring to life, a team of volunteers was setting up for the day's event, the 25th anniversary celebration of the Charlotte and Caleb Davies Music Foundation. Tents were being erected, sound systems checked, and instruments tuned. It was going to be a day of music, memories, and hope for the future. James felt a presence beside him and turned to see Charlotte, wrapped in a warm robe, her silver hair gleaming in the morning light. Though time and illness had taken their toll, her spirit remained as vibrant as ever. "It's going to be a beautiful day," she said softly, leaning against him. James wrapped an arm around her shoulders, pulling her close. "Indeed it is, my love. Indeed it is." As the morning progressed, the estate came alive with activity. Noah arrived early, his production skills as sharp as ever despite his greying hair, coordinating the musical performances with practiced ease. Tommy was there too, leading a group of young volunteers, his gentle guidance a testament to the man he had become. Caleb flew in from his latest world tour, bringing with him a group of talented young musicians he had mentored. His homecoming was marked by warm embraces and excited chatter about the day ahead. Even Marcus made an appearance, his relationship with the family having grown stronger over the years. He joined James in greeting guests, his presence a reminder of the healing power of forgiveness and second chances. As noon approached, guests began to arrive. There were famous musicians whose careers had been launched by the foundation, children whose lives had been transformed by music education programs, and supporters from all walks of life. The air buzzed with excitement and gratitude. The celebration officially began with a speech from James. Standing on the makeshift stage, he looked out at the sea of faces, some familiar, some new, all united by the power of music. 25 years ago, he began, his voice strong and clear. "We started this foundation with a simple dream to share the healing and transformative power of music with the world. We had no idea then how far the dream would take us." As James spoke of the foundation's journey, the lives touched, the barriers broken, the music created, he saw tears in many eyes, including his own. He spoke of Charlotte's unwavering vision, Caleb's inspiring talent, and the countless individuals who had contributed to their success. "But our work is far from over," he continued, his voice filled with passion. "As long as there are children who need the solace of music, as long as there are voices waiting to be heard, we will continue to play our song of hope and healing." The day unfolded in a beautiful symphony of performances, workshops, and heartfelt testimonials. Young prodigies discovered through the Foundation's programs performed alongside established stars. Music therapy sessions demonstrated the healing power of melody and rhythm. Every corner of the estate resonated with the joy of music. As evening fell, the grand finale began. On the main stage, Charlotte took her place at the piano, with Caleb beside her. James, Noah, Tommy, and Marcus joined them, each with an instrument in hand. Together they began to play the song of the soul, the melody that had started it all. As the familiar notes filled the air, James looked around at his family, this beautiful, unconventional group bound by love and music. He saw the years reflected in their faces, the struggles, the triumphs, the moments of doubt and the victories. But most of all he saw love, pure, enduring, and as powerful as the day it had first brought them together. The music swelled, joined by the voices of the crowd. It was a moment of perfect harmony, past and present, young and old, all united in the universal language of music. As the final notes faded into the night, James felt a profound sense of gratitude wash over him. They had faced countless challenges over the years, health scares, financial struggles, moments of doubt. But through it all, they had persevered, guided by their love for each other and their belief in the power of music to change lives. Looking out at the sea of smiling faces, James knew that their legacy would live on. In every child who picked up an instrument for the first time, in every patient finding solace in melody, in every life touched by the healing power of music, their song would continue. As the celebration wound down and guests began to depart, the family gathered in the quiet of the music room. No words were needed as they sat together, the bonds between them stronger than ever. Charlotte began to play softly, a new melody none of them had heard before. One by one, they joined in, Caleb with his guitar, James on the bass, Noah adding percussion, Tommy and Marcus finding their own rhythms. It was spontaneous, imperfect, and utterly beautiful, a true reflection of their journey together. As the improvised piece came to a close, Charlotte looked around at her family, her eyes shining with love and pride. "Thank you," she said simply, her voice filled with emotion, "for everything." James took her hand, squeezing it gently. "No, my dear, thank you for showing us the true power of music and love." As they sat there in the quiet of the night, surrounded by the instruments and memories that had shaped their lives, James knew that this was just another chapter in their ongoing story. The melody of their lives would continue to evolve, to touch hearts, to heal wounds, and to bring joy. For in the end, that was the true legacy of their family, not just the foundation or the lives they had touched, but the enduring power of love expressed through music. It was a legacy that would resonate for generations to come, a timeless symphony of hope, healing, and the unbreakable bonds of family. And as the first light of a new day began to peek through the windows, James knew that whatever the future held, they would face it together, their family orchestra ready to play on, creating beautiful music for years to come. Life's most beautiful symphonies are often composed from its greatest challenges. The story of James, Charlotte, Caleb, and their extended family reminds us that love, in its purest form, can transform lives and create legacies that resonate far beyond our individual experiences. Like the notes in a complex melody, our lives intertwine with others in ways we cannot always predict. Each struggle, each triumph, each moment of doubt and revelation adds depth and richness to our personal compositions. The key is to remain open to the music, even when the rhythm seems chaotic or the harmony eludes us. Family isn't always defined by blood. Sometimes it's the people who stand by us through our darkest times, who believe in us when we've lost faith in ourselves, who help us find our voice when we've forgotten how to sing. These bonds, forged through shared experiences and unconditional love, can create the most powerful and enduring melodies of all. Music has the extraordinary power to heal, to unite, and to express what words alone cannot. It can bridge divides, soothe wounded hearts, and give voice to our deepest emotions. In nurturing this gift in ourselves and others, we have the potential to change lives and touch souls far beyond our immediate reach. Remember, every life has its own unique song. Some may be gentle lullabies, others fierce symphonies, but each is valuable and worthy of being heard. By supporting and amplifying these diverse voices, we create a world filled with richer, more beautiful music. In the end, our legacy isn't measured by wealth or fame, but by the lives we've touched, the love we've shared, and the positive change we've brought to the world. Like a timeless melody, the impact of our kindness and compassion can echo through generations, inspiring others to add their own beautiful notes to life's grand composition. So, let us embrace each day as an opportunity to create something beautiful, to heal through harmony, and to love without reservation. For in doing so, we compose the greatest symphony of all, a life well lived and a world made better by our presence in it. As we close this chapter of our story, we want to express our heartfelt gratitude to you, our cherished audience, for joining us on this emotional journey. Your support and engagement mean the world to us and fuel our passion for storytelling. We'd love to hear your thoughts on James, Charlotte, and Caleb's journey. Did their story touch your heart? Did it resonate with your own experiences of love, family, and the power of music? If this tale moved you, inspired you, or simply brightened your day, we invite you to leave a comment with the number 1. Your 1 tells us that these are the kinds of stories you want to hear more of, and it encourages us to keep crafting narratives that touch the soul. Excited to see where this family's journey might lead next? If you're eager for a potential part 3, let us know by commenting with the number 3. Your enthusiasm guides our creative process and helps us understand what resonates with you. We value your honest opinions. If there were aspects of the story you didn't quite agree with or would like to discuss further, please share your thoughts in the comments. Your feedback is invaluable in helping us grow and improve as storytellers. Lastly, if our stories have become a part of your day that you look forward to, consider subscribing to our channel. Your subscription is more than just a click. It's a vote of confidence in our work and a source of motivation for our team. Thank you for being a part of our storytelling community. Together we're creating a space where the power of narrative can inspire, heal, and connect us all. We look forward to embarking on many more journeys with you through the magic of storytelling.